And welcome to the fifth beer of Oktoberfest. I'm sitting here at Ald Brewing with Alan Adams, a mortgage originator at Cardinal Financial here in Lubbock, Texas, and we're going to talk about FHA loans and drink some beer.
Absolutely.
All right, so what are you drinking? The lager?
Yes, it's the lager here, and it's really good.
Really good. I'm having the Bock. This is really good. They were out of Oktoberfest. They'd already sold it out, and so we had to switch to something besides Oktoberfest for Oktoberfest.
That's a good sign that you're in a good brewery, right?
Right, when they sell out of the beer? Exactly, yeah. That means it was good. That means I missed something. I didn't get in here in time to have an Oktoberfest. All right, Alan. So tell us about FHA loans. What is it? Why would you want one? What does it take to get one?
Well, I'll just kind of hit just the very highlights because it doesn't do us a lot of good, I don't think, to get too deep into the weeds on this stuff, because for every type of loan, there's so many things that are involved in a home mortgage and getting qualified and those types of things. So I'll just kind of hit the highlights as I see them and the things that I look for and the things that I try to do to help folks buy usually their first home. Maybe it's their second home after selling one, but a lot of times I help first-time home buyers get into that first house.
That's awesome.
So there are several things, there are several reasons why an FHA loan is advantageous to a buyer. One of those is you can get as low as a 3.5% down payment.
Nice.
Which, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you have to have 20% down to buy a house. Well, no, that's not true. So, you know, if you think that's what you have to have down, you know, talk to a lender. Give me a call, and we'll just talk about it.
Yeah. Well, and that's something you've always done for people I know you've worked with, is you've been very creative in helping them figure out what's the right loan for them, because it's not always FHA, but sometimes it is.
Yeah. One of the other reasons that people like FHA loans is because for many other types of loans, you have to have a much higher credit score. With FHA, we can get you financed with 3.5% down payment all the way down to a 580 credit score. That's the FHA guideline for 3.5% down.
Wow.
So
that's nice.
You know, and one of the other things about an FHA loan is that 3.5%, you can come up with that in multiple ways. You know, FHA allows you to accept gift money from family or employers or things like that. So if you're relocating for your job and you just don't have the down payment and part of the closing costs, well, if your employer is willing to help you with that, you can accept that gift money to help you get in your next home.
That's awesome.
So that's one other advantage of those. On FHA loans, and this is not a big deal to most folks when they first make the loan, but let's say you have a home loan for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and something happens. Let's say you win the lottery or something and you're ready to pay it off, or whatever the case may be. FHA loans have no prepayment penalty. So if you want to pay some in advance, you can always do that.
That's awesome.
Or pay it off early. There's no penalty for that.
Yeah.
One of the big things that I see has to do with debt to income ratios.
Okay.
Who knows what? I've been in banking 30 years, and most people, you say, oh, what's your debt to income ratio, or do you have an idea what your debt to income ratio is? Most people just don't.
Right.
But it's exactly what it says. It's a ratio of how much your debt is compared to what your income is.
And that's like on a monthly basis.
Yeah,
how much
it's on a
you're paying
monthly
in debt
basis
versus how much you're making per month.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
So on FHA loans, I can help people get qualified at a much higher debt to income ratio.
Okay.
Most lenders are looking at 36 to 43 maybe percent debt to income, whatever that number is. But on FHA, if we use the FHA lending, then we can go up to a 56% debt to income.
All right.
So,
So in real simple terms, if you got an income of $2,000 a month, then you're looking at what's that? 1120.
Yeah, 1120.
So you could be paying 1120 in debt. So that's your car payment. That's not your utilities and stuff.
Well, but that includes the house payment.
But that includes so it includes house. So it's not your utilities. It's not your health insurance.
Nope.
But it's your
It's
car
not,
loan.
and it's not your taxes on your earned income. It's
So
your gross income.
Yeah. So it's your car loan. It's your credit cards, and add in what that house is going to cost, what that house's payment is going to be. And if that comes in, if you're making $2,000 a month, then that comes in at 1120 or below. You're within
Then we
that
can
window.
get you qualified.
That's awesome.
So there are a lot of people who you take the combination of credit scores, which a lot of other lenders today, and lenders make their own decisions around this. So even if you, some lenders won't allow you to won't go down to a 580 credit score.
Right.
Some lenders still want you to have a 620, even if it's an FHA loan, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. But I can go down to a 580 and 3.5% down, and a lot of lenders still can't do below 620 or 600.
Right.
So
it opens up a lot of options for people.
well, yeah. Now, and it opens up a lot of options for you guys as well.
Sure.
I mean, when you have someone who can do a lower credit score, not that every lower credit score is going to ultimately get approved or pre-qualified, but at least you have some things to talk to your buyers about.
Right. Yeah. Giving them some other opportunities they might not have had if they went to their banker or someone who's looking at that 620 credit score.
One of the other things on FHA loans is they will allow seller concessions, and that is if the seller of the house is willing to help you purchase his home, he can make concessions up to 6% of the price of the home.
Okay.
That goes toward your closing costs.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot of that in the market right now?
Not right now.
Just being the seller's market, the sellers are not always paying that. They're wanting their price, but in previous markets, there's been a lot of that. You still see it some today, I think.
Yeah.
I've had a few deals that were that way, but just not as many.
Well, you get in some markets that houses aren't selling as quickly, or you get a buyer that needs to get his home sold really fast.
Yeah.
That's just another incentive for the seller,
Yeah.
for the seller to get his home sold faster. It's a buyer out there.
So we see a lot of times as realtors working with our buyers, we see a lot of houses that have financing, the recommended financing options from the seller listed on it, and they'll be cash. Everybody takes cash. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't take cash.
Yeah.
And conventional, but we don't always see FHA on there. Why would we not see? Is there a limit on what FHA can do, or are there drawbacks to it maybe?
Well, there
That's
are
not the right word.
I don't know. Obviously, you guys as realtors are looking at and making recommendations to your sellers as to what offers maybe are more advantageous. And probably everybody believes that a cash offer is the easiest thing to close. But I wouldn't be afraid at all of an FHA buyer if I were a seller.
Okay.
Especially based on what I've seen, we still close on time.
Sure.
Appraisals. You do have to be cognizant. You have to be aware that FHA, as compared to conventional financing, does have some requirements around appraisals and the condition of the property. So if there are real problems with the property, then the seller may need to make some repairs.
Okay.
before the property qualifies for an FHA loan.
So then,
But if the property qualifies, we can close those as soon as we can anything else.
So that might be why you don't see a FHA on one, is the seller knows that it has problems, and the seller's not wanting to fix those problems. They're wanting to just
doesn't want to spend additional money to fix problems.
Yeah, they just want to sell it and move on with life, and not be responsible for fixing any FHA required repairs. Okay.
Well, and that's okay. That's why they own the property.
Right.
It's their choice.
Yeah. And so there's always another option besides FHA, but FHA is a great way to get in for that, especially like you said, for that first-time home buyer trying to get into a house. It opens up so many doors for people that might not have been available to them before.
Well, and we see an awful lot of young couples who, and I say couples just because that's mostly what I see, young families, young couples who are working to get into their first home because they know that's where investing for your future starts. And so what a great step for a young couple. And sometimes they don't have the savings. But they have good jobs and they've had them for a couple of years. That's one of the other things that they look for in approvals on any type of lending is consistent work history. Consistent income. Let's put it that way. Consistent income. And if you can show a couple of years of consistent income, even if you've switched jobs, consistent and improving income is always good for an underwriter to see from the standpoint of borrowers.
Is there a limit on the max that you can do for an FHA loan? Like you can only go up to $300,000.
Every county has their limit based on single family. For a single family home. FHA, you can do single family. You can do duplexes, quads, up to a 4-unit.
So you can't go buy an apartment complex FHA.
No, you can't go buy.
You can go get a quad or a duplex or triplex.
And
which is a great way to have somebody else make your mortgage payment for you.
Yes.
Buy a quad, move into one, rent the other three.
Yes.
With an FHA loan.
Yeah. Let's see. But one of the things that I see, and your question about is there a limit? The short answer is yes, there is a limit depending on if there's 1, 2, 3, 4 units and your location in the country. Some areas of the country, a single family house is priced much differently than in other parts of the country or the state.
Right.
So, but in Lubbock and most of West Texas, I believe it's about $356,000 on a single family.
Well, you're exactly right. So my wife and I were in San Diego. This would have been like January of 2016. So San Diego to me is the place to be in January. It is nice. Yeah. You need a light jacket. You're outside all the time. We're like, man, it would be great to live in San Diego. So we pull up the real estate section and we're looking at houses in San Diego, and we realize we are very happy here where we can afford a house. I don't think we'd have to sell everything we owned, and then I'd have to sell a kidney.
It seems like Lubbock's best kept secret is getting to be more and more of a popular place for people to go. Yeah. Because of that thing that you're talking about, which is number one, home affordability, and the rest of the cost of living issues.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
even though the FHA loan limit here is a little lower, you can buy a lot more house here for that money than you can in other parts of the country.
I think that's exactly right. All right, so before we wrap up this part of the interview, anything else about FHA that we need to know? Or that they need to know? I mean, I know there's a ton about FHA. Yeah. Anything specific that you want to tease so that somebody wants to call you up and find out more on their own?
Well, I think one of the things that we've already talked about are the exact things that make FHA one of the largest loans. I do more FHA loans than I do anything else.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I got out of commercial lending and doing other things was to try to help families,
Sure.
especially buy their first home.
Yeah.
But I'm not just a first-time home buyer lender,
Right.
and FHA is not just a loan for first-time home buyers.
Right.
So,
So we have talked a
we
lot
can-
about first-time buyers, but
Yeah.
anybody can do this.
oh
Anybody
yeah,
can get
anybody
FHA.
can do that. Now the issue is you can't have two FHA loans at the same
Okay.
time
Good to know.
unless they're over 100 miles apart,
Ah.
and some
Yeah.
some things like that. So
And I think, do you have to live in the house you buy?
yes,
Or like, so you can't buy that as a rental property with an FHA loan?
right.
I mean, unless it's like a duplex or quad and you're living in one of the units.
Right.
Okay. So Alan, we learned a lot about FHA, but now let's talk about Alan and find out a little bit about you. How did you get into being a real estate lender?
Well, that's a long story that I'm not sure we have enough
Okay.
time to get very deep into.
Right, because the storage space is running out on the camera.
Yeah. So I'll just hit the highlights. I was
Right.
raised in Crosby, 30 miles east of here. Raised on a ranch there. It's probably why I
Right.
wear a hat. I was raised on the ranch. Went to school here at Tech. Hung around long enough to get a master's degree, guns up. Yeah. And
I didn't know you had a master's. What's your master's in?
it's a Master of Agriculture.
All right.
I
learn something new about you every day.
See, I took all my core classes out of in ag economics, and then all my electives were in animal science, range and wildlife, and BA, which seems like an odd pairing, but I was just going to go manage ranches the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I needed enough finance to know how to, like any business, I needed to know that side.
Yeah.
But I also needed to know range and wildlife management and animal science and things like that. So that's why it's kind of a general degree, but it is a master's degree from Tech.
Yeah. That's cool. All right.
My undergrad was in ag economics. That was a long time ago. Oh, my dad also graduated from Texas Tech in 1956.
Oh, wow.
And he used to hitchhike back and forth to school because they didn't have cars. And he had this big suitcase with a big double T on the side, and he'd just take off, headed to Lubbock. Invariably, somebody would pick him up and bring him back to school.
I don't recommend that now. That seems like, that's kind of a bygone days thing, right?
So yes, I was raised in Crosby, went to school at Tech, was just going to manage ranches, went to Central and South Texas and managed ranches for 10 years, and then got the opportunity to go into banking because of my background in agriculture at that time and ranching and cattle. I was hired by a bank in Amarillo to help manage their ag portfolio, of which they had a sizable portfolio. So I helped them do that for several years, and then that got me into commercial lending. And so I did that for the next 25 years and decided to get out of commercial lending and start helping folks with their home loans.
Yeah.
And it's been very rewarding. It's been challenging a little bit, but it's been very rewarding. So yes, I live here in Lubbock. Lubbock is home, and I don't see us actually moving anywhere else to retire.
Right.
Cost of living here is pretty good.
That's true. Oh, that's cool. So you got some kids.
Yeah, I have 3 kids. My wife has 2. Her 2 kids are in Arizona. One was a competitive gymnast at Arizona State.
Oh.
The daughter Mackenzie is a vet tech in Arizona.
Cool.
She's
So
partial.
if you ever go back to
she's partial
managing ranches,
she's partial to animals. She can help.
yeah, exactly.
And my wife is a commercial realtor here in town, and she does mostly commercial leasing.
And what's her name and where does she work?
Casey Adams, and she works at Graco Real Estate Development here in town.
Does a lot of leasing of
Yep.
properties. That's awesome.
Yep.
We sat around
Properties
last night and
in
chatted.
Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Odessa.
All around, yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool.
And I am licensed to do mortgage lending all over the state of Texas. So, regardless of where you move in the state of Texas, I can help you buy your next house.
That's awesome. I have to have that breath.
So
to go
you
out.
have to remember, call the cowboy.
Right? Well, speaking of that, so you were telling me the other day.
Call the cowboy.
I know we were talking earlier about FHA loans. We were talking though about a few days ago about USDA loans.
Yeah.
There's an extreme benefit to that, at least in my mind.
Oh yeah. USDA loans, you can get 100% financing.
No, so no down payment. You still have your
Yeah.
closing costs, but no down payment on the note.
Right. And the reason for that is, obviously, when it says USDA, that is U.S. Department of Agriculture. Well, who would think the U.S. Department of Agriculture should be helping people get home loans?
Yeah.
But in rural, can you say that? Rural. It's like full.
Oh.
Rural home loans are an important issue
Yeah.
for the whole state or for the whole federal government. So they've mandated USDA to try to help people in rural areas buy, their homes.
So it's not just a farm. It's not
No.
just a ranch.
No.
You can buy a home inside the city,
Yes.
right down by the courthouse, if the town is small enough.
Right. If it's outside of the map area. Now, if you want to buy a home on 50th and Quaker and Lubbock, yeah, that's not going to qualify.
Right.
But if you go right to the west of Wolford or Shallow Water or
even in
place or Slayton,
in like Plainview, Slayton, Levelland, Morton.
Yeah, all of those cities, you can get qualified for a USDA
cool.
loan there.
That's cool. So doing a lot of loans, helping a lot of people get into houses is very rewarding.
Yeah, I wish I'd started this a long time ago.
So what do you do when you're not busy helping people get into homes?
Well, with 7 grandkids.
That's a full-time job.
Yeah. Well,
We have one. It's a
with
full-time
7
job.
grandkids,
I'm out.
it can be. So I have kids that live from Silver City, New Mexico, to Levelland and Abernathy. So
that's
and my dad still lives in Crosbyton. So
So that's not too far of a stretch. That's all drivable in a single day to see the grandkids. That's cool.
so my grandkids in Abernathy they're 6, 11, and 12, and very involved in all the sports up there, and they really like it there. So he's a baseball coach, she's a teacher, so they're
Nice.
involved in everything in the school, and
Yeah. So that keeps them busy and lots of activities for you and
a lot of
Nancy to
stuff.
go to.
Yes, a lot of things for us to go to.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you for hanging out with me, drinking a beer,
Absolutely.
talking about loans, and hanging out at all. Come and check it out.